Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first panel discussion of this two-day event here with IoT World. Welcome to have, or great to have you online here, and I think we have a great conversation geared up on digital transformation trends for manufacturing and supply chain. As Lucian just mentioned, my name is Ira Sharp, and I'll be your host for today, moderating this panel discussion with a couple of great thought leaders in the space. And really what this session is going to be about is we're going to talk about the overall supply chain software market, and really it's booming. There's a lot going on there. What's happening? We're going to look at some overreaching market trends and what's going on in this digital supply chain market. And then we're going to look at some success stories of digitalization and manufacturing and really how all this applies in the supply chain industry. So I hope you're excited, and I've had a good time to chat with some of these guys, kind of gearing up for this panel discussion, and I think we're going to have a great dialogue here. Now, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, I want you to take a minute and familiarize yourself with the interface that you have in front of you. And to get started, if you look around, there should be a chat feature. If you can go ahead and type in the chat where you're from, I'd love to see kind of what kind of audience we have and who we have from all over the state, the country, the world, wherever it may be. So if you can go ahead and enter that in the chat, that'd be great. So we have Athens, Greece. We have Jamaica, another one from Athens, Greece, popular there. Got some Boston, got all kinds of places all over the place here. So thank you. San Francisco. Oh, it's very early for you guys. Minneapolis, great. India, yeah. Philippines, all over the place. Man, we truly do have a global audience here. So thank you for keep on popping them in there. It's great to see kind of the overall international audience here. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is, as we go through this panel discussion, we have a couple of keyed up conversations to have, and I'm really excited about this, but we also want to take in your questions as well. Now, what I'd ask you to do is to use the Q&A tool that's also in this interface to ask any questions you may have. That way we can keep track of them a little bit easier. Don't just use the chat, use the Q&A tool to ask those questions. It'll really help us facilitate and get to those questions at a later part of the session here. And when you're looking at IoT World, you know, we have a whole bunch of events coming up, all things IoT Day in January. We have the World Energy Day in March, Manufacturing Day in May, Industrial Metaverse, Cybersecurity Day, Smart Buildings Day, Manufacturing and Supply Chain Day, all throughout the year, going in all these different months. So encourage you to come back and take a look and check things out. It's going to be a great series of events. Now, this session here today is set to run about 58 minutes long. We're going to keep it on track, on point, and keep the conversation succinct and action-packed and very informative. And I just want to point out that none of this would be possible without really all the sponsors that we have here at IoT World to put all of this together. These sponsors include Hitachi Ventura, HiveMQ, Faircom, Fortinet, Eurotech, Oxus, Building Cybersecurity, Exona, MSA, GE Digital, IFM, Intel, Litmus, and of course, NCC Group, some of which are here on the call here today. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the topic at hand. And to really set the stage of who you have here to talk with, I'd like to do a quick round of introductions. And to really get that started, I'm going to start with Ravi Subramanian, also known as Superman, and I try to do my best to pronounce his last name. And to really get to know the speakers at hand here, I'd ask you to just give us a little bit of an oversight of who you are. And I'd like to make this in a form fashion. So if you can give us like a little bit of your family, your occupation, and your other aspects here as well, including and your recreation and your motivation for being here today. So Ravi, can you get us kicked off?
Absolutely. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. My name is Ravi Subramanian. Ira, thank you so much for trying to pronounce my last name, and Superman is great. I appreciate that. I see people join from Chennai, India. Shout out to you, because that's where I'm from originally. I grew there, and then I I came to the US, I did a master's, and I've been living in Chicago for about 22 years. I'm married and I have a wife and two kids, 15 and 11, two daughters. And I love the four seasons. Don't get me wrong here, but sometimes I do feel that the winters are a little cold, but it's okay. It's part and parcel of living in Chicago. I'm actually a director of industrial solutions for manufacturing at HiveMQ. HiveMQ is a company that provides data movement, right? Bidirectional data movement using basically a data broker. And that data broker is based on a technology called MQTT, right? And we can talk more about that later. But what I do is basically I focus on the manufacturing vertical, and basically I help position our product to manufacturing customers. I have about 7 or so years of experience in manufacturing, IIoT, Industry 4.0, and data analytics, kind of like related to that in companies such as GE Digital. I know GE is one of the sponsors here as well, so shout out to you. Weir Minerals, Parker Hannifin. For recreation, I'm an avid runner. I love to run. Any new place I go to, I'm now in Miami, Florida. I take my running shoes and I like to run outside. It's beautiful. It clears your mind up and it prepares you for the day, right? Because typically these travel days are intense. And I also love singing Indian songs, and I play this instrument called the mridangam, which is an Indian instrument, which I learned, and I also teach some kids because that way I actually keep up with it, right? And my motivation is to be here is manufacturing is an ocean. If you feel that you've captured everything or know everything about that, I think it's like it's not true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So you got to be up to date, especially after COVID. There's been a lot of changes that happened in industry 4.0, digital transformation, IIoT, especially around supply chain. And I'm really fascinated by all of that, and I want to continue to learn, right? Being a technologist with more than 22 years of experience in all these different areas, apart from manufacturing, I've been in cellular, automotive fleet management, enterprise mobility, and jumping into manufacturing. I'm always kind of like intrigued by how technology comes together and helps people out in their day-to-day lives, right? So, and that's kind of like really something that I'm looking forward to the conversation today, Ira. Over to you.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Ravi. I'm also, I love to run, helps clear your head, these kind of things. So thank you for that overview. John Barufka, right? So hopefully I did a better job with your name. I don't know, but John, can you give us a little bit of an overview from your side with NCC Group? I know you're the VP of Sales over there. Give us a little background on yourself.
Ira, good morning and thank you. And I was getting worried that I might get labeled with one of the superheroes, and I was trying to guess which one. But happy to be here and join all of you and my co-panelists. So pretty excited about this. I am based in Boston. I saw a couple Boston people come up as well. So shout out to the New England folks. Married, lived here since I graduated from college in this area a long time ago. I have two sons, 16 and 20. Ira, as you mentioned, I'm the VP of Sales for the US for a company called NCC Group, which is one of the sponsors. And we're in the business of helping protect IP, provide software resilience and risk mitigation and business continuity around applications that run on-prem or in the cloud for companies. So in terms of things I love to do, certainly I'm a big fan of cooking and barbecuing. If I had a different a career path, I may have been a chef, but I never pursued that. So I act like I'm one at home, but I love to fish and golf with my two sons, and neither one likes the other sport. So I usually do it separately with both of them. And really been doing this for a long time. I've been 35 years in this space, in this business. Software escrow is the key service that the division that we're in provides, and I've been part of really thousands of transactions between buyers of technology and licensees or licensors of technology, where we've been able to help sort of engender trust between the two parties around the concerns and risks that buyers feel they may have in doing business with smaller companies or with riskier technologies. So excited to be here and really looking forward to the session.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. And I think we've got it straight. So you're going to do all the cooking, and then we have to run with Ravi to burn off all those calories. So we got that covered.
There you go. We're going to make him sing at the end as well.
There we go. Perfect. So Matt, I know you're joining us from Germany, in Hamburg. Matt Koldizak, you're from Hamburg, Germany, and with IoT analytics, and you've been doing a lot of research, particularly on this topic. So can you give us a little background on yourself?
Yes, thank you. So yes, I'm based in north of Germany, in Hamburg. I'm originally from France. Working at IoT Analytics here, we do market research. So what we do is that we report on the latest trends of what's happening in the IoT world. We do forecast on connectivity services. We look at IoT software, and I'm part of the industrial team. So we are looking at what's happening in the industrial IoT space. So looking at things like digital twin, industrial software, and I recently looked at supply chain. So supply chain software, hardware, and even connectivity services for supply chain for the last 6 months. So I've been talking with vendors, talking with end users, trying to understand what is happening there, what do people want. As part of myself, so yes, I live in Germany, in Hamburg with my partner. I like soccer, it's part of hobby, but as long as the French team wins. So far, so good, I should say, but let's see, maybe not next week. And yes, glad to be here for another time. Looking forward to talk about trends.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm not going to get into the soccer conversation, being from the U.S. with an international group of people here, because that'll just take us down a rabbit hole we don't want to go on, and we want to stay focused on the topic at hand here. But so Matt, looking at your research and specifically what you've done for the past 6 months, really looking into the supply chain side of things. Of course, supply chain is a hot topic. It's always a hot topic. It's evolving topic, as well as, just digital transformation in general. Can you give us a highlight from some of your research and some of the things that you've found and how this applies?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I could start by saying something quite simple, is that before the pandemic, high-level decision makers like CEOs or VPs, they used to think that supply chain was there and they didn't have to worry about it. So it would always work. They didn't really have to really deep dive into this. It would be there and work well. And now they're asking a lot of questions because we've seen supply chain disruptions. We've seen out of stocks. We've seen companies that cannot run because they don't have the right parts like semiconductors. And there's one simple thing. Every quarter, we track what CEOs talk about. We look at earnings call. We look at keywords there, and now supply chain is everywhere. So if you look at 2018, 2017, people didn't really talk about supply chain, or very rarely. And now every CEO has been mentioning supply chain issues, supply chain bottlenecks, and trying to figure out what's happening. So what that means really is that CEOs and high-level decision makers, they've been asking a lot of questions to their supply chain managers. They've been asking, so why don't we have enough parts? Why is the shipment late? And now supply chain managers, they are looking for supply chain visibility. They are looking for tools and strategies to answer those questions. And what's quite interesting here is that we see that there's 3 distinct strategies to gain supply chain visibility. The first one is that some big companies, manufacturing companies, they've been working on buying connectivity devices from vendors like Nexiot in Switzerland or Orbcom in the US. They're buying those trackers, putting them on their boxes, on their cargo that they're shipping, so that they can get a live view. So real-time data on the location of their cargo around the world. And then they have a good estimation of the ETA, of the time of arrival. They know where the cargo is stuck. They can do some analysis there. So that's the first strategy. The second strategy that's quite interesting because it's totally different, but it has the same value proposition, is that some companies, they work with supply chain visibility software vendors. Those vendors are people like, or companies like ForeKite or Project 44. And what those companies do is that they buy really a lot of data. They buy as much data as they can because that's their business model. So from port authorities, from logistic companies, everywhere they can, they buy supply chain data on where the cargo moving or where it is moving, where are the bottlenecks, and they put that for you on the platform so that it's easy to consume, that you can make your own analysis there. That's the second strategy. So The second one is quite easier because you just have to log in on a platform and start working with the data. The third one that is quite interesting is that a lot of manufacturing companies, they're just waiting for someone else to do the work for them. By that, I mean that we see a lot of shipping companies like supply chain logistic companies like Hapag-Lloyd or Maersk that are owning those big container ships. They are making announcements on supply chain digitizations. What they are doing is that they are partnering with vendors like Nexiot or Orbcom to buy connectivity devices, trackers, and literally put one tracker on every single one of their containers. So for example, we've seen Hapag-Lloyd and Maersk doing that last year, where they announced that we are going to buy really a lot of trackers to track all of our containers so that all of our customers that are going to ship things in our containers, they can know in real time where they are. So obviously, those are huge, huge new projects. We're going to see that happening like mid-2024, where we will see the first results. What's quite interesting there is that they're already thinking about the next step. They are thinking about adding new services where you can actually rent or buy smaller connectivity devices that you connect in Bluetooth so that you don't only have a device outside your container, but you can put some on your boxes inside the containers to track temperatures, pressures, humidity levels. And then you can go to the next level. You can understand where are my cargo being damaged, why is it too hot in the container if you're shipping food, or things like that. So to summarize, 3 distinct strategies. What's interesting is that it's going all over the place now. There's a lot of questions, a lot of push on supply chain visibility, and a lot of new companies doing new things.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. And you know, I look at that IoT analytics report quite a bit, the one with the CEOs, the one you were talking about, and the keywords, and I think a lot of us do. And I have seen supply chain pop up quite a bit for very good reason. And it's really interesting to me to see, you know, there was you mentioned it, you know, there was the expectation that it would just be there, and then when all of a sudden it wasn't, it became, okay, well, why and how and what and all these other things. And to answer that, just like it is common in a lot of different types of processes, is to get to the root of that, the how, the what, the why, you need more information. And hey, it was sent on this particular time, or we plan on producing it at this particular time, maybe that's not enough anymore. And you need those extra sensors. And then you need to aggregate that data. You need to utilize that data. You need to transform really the way these processes were happening. So that's really good insight, and I really like those 3 points. You know, where you're looking at, you know, really how things are transporting and getting the sensors, and then evaluating that data and utilizing that data, and then, you know, getting all the for real-time information, and then getting the inside and outside information as well. So when you're looking at data and it really stacks up, whether you're talking about supply chain or manufacturing, you got to utilize that in some way. And Ravi, I know you at HiveMQ, you know, data and data movement and these kinds of things are kind of your expertise. You know, what are you seeing as some of the connectivity challenges within a system like this, or IoT in general? You know, what are your thoughts there, Ravi?
Yeah. Thank you, Ira. I think that's a great, first of all, Matt, great insights. Appreciate providing those insights. Specifically, you know, obviously the COVID hitting over the past 2 years has really accelerated the digital transformation efforts of a lot of companies, especially in manufacturing, right? And I think it's really shown that supply chain, for example, is not as resilient as what you thought it was, right? What people thought was, hey, you know what? In our little world, our supply chain is great because we have all of the vendors lined up and we have all of the information coming from different sources lined up, and we're good for what we're trying to do. But then when kind of like it got strained because of all the extra demand that came up, they couldn't keep up with it, right? What people realized is that from a supply chain perspective, there is a need for having a global view of data coming in from all across your different vendors and other systems across the ecosystem, right? And then that has to then be juxtaposed with your IIoT data coming from sensors, like Matt mentioned, or coming from PLCs and other devices that are going to hold pieces of information, which over time, when you look at manufacturing, it is kind of siloed, right? Because I think from a like the advance from the industry 3.0, as we would like to call it, where people had their own control systems that kind of like did like industry 4.0-ish stuff in a smaller scale. So those created a lot of islands, right? And then those islands need to be broken if you have to bring the data together. Now, obviously, the challenge there is that most likely, like these are talking proprietary languages. They have their own kind of communication protocol, and that would be difficult to kind of like talk to each of these systems. Now, I know that there are a lot of systems out there that can bring the data together, but there has to be some kind of like a way to kind of have a common open source way to easily bring the data to, say, the enterprise, for example, or to the cloud, to be able to do like data analytics and ML, AI, and things like that, right? And then like from a connectivity perspective, especially say in oil and gas and other industries where you have equipments that are remote, it's very difficult to be able to connect to those and be able to easily get the data, because obviously, they are hostile environments, so going and setting up these things are difficult. I mean, you don't have really much of connectivity there, right? Even cellular doesn't work. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get satellite. Your stability of the network is not there, right? And then there is also other kind of like challenges on top of that, where systems have been bolted on top, so it's not quite easy to break all of this, get into the right way of networking the whole thing. And this is where I think technologies like MQTT really comes in, right? Because MQTT is a lightweight publish subscribe based protocol that was specifically created for the oil and gas industry when it started, right? With Phillips 66, for example. The problem statement there was that, hey, we have all these remote systems, remote oil wells and remote oil operations, and there that need to be to the central enterprise. We need a solution that kind of like environment is not reliable and has a lot of
Hey Ravi,
Yes.
I think you're breaking up a little bit, and I think your screen may be frozen. So just figured maybe I'd jump in just for a second to see if the system would calm down and if you can keep on talking. But
okay. Okay. You know what? Maybe can I just turn off my video and
yes, please do. Maybe that'll help.
And you
yes.
Maybe give me a visual whether it's okay. Okay.
Go ahead and turn.
If you can.
Go ahead and turn off your video, and if you did, it's still frozen on your screen. Okay, and so you were just talking about, we had heard up until the point where you're talking about MQTT and it being used in oil and gas, and kind of really evolving from there. Maybe you can step from that point on.
Okay, I'll do that. So basically, yeah, MQTT was specifically created for that industry, but of course, it's gotten acceptance in other industries where you have similar challenges, right? And that data then needs to be combined, say, with other external pieces of data, which then it needs to be combined together to be able to do all your analytics and all the reporting, and specifically for having a better visibility from a global supply chain perspective, as well as for regulated reporting, right? Because that's another area where companies are struggling with, especially in pharma, where obviously there is more production, which means that there is more need for regulatory compliance reporting, which typically is kind of a very manual process. All that needs to be automated. So companies or solutions like HiveMQ can provide that ability to have the data, combine all of the data to be able to provide you with the ability, or have the data at your fingertips to be able to do all these advanced use cases. So that's what I would say from a challenge perspective, some of the connectivity challenges, and how solutions like MQTT and Sparkplug, for example, for manufacturing, and is helping with some of those connectivity challenges. So that's what I wanted to.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ravi. And by the way, the audio is much better. So maybe it's best that the camera stays off for now, but I do think we put up your picture there on the screen so everybody can see who's talking. So this is really great, and it really harmonizes together, because when Matt was talking about supply chain, one of the big trends is, hey, we need to know where things are. We need to know things are going on, because they're not just there anymore. To do that, we need to get more data. So we add more sensors, we add more things, we add more systems, and then there's more disparate data. So then you need to harmonize this data, and one of the ways to do that is through MQTT, and I know it's really exploding in popularity. And Ravi, is there a particular reason that MQTT above some of the other protocols is really expanding in popularity, or is there anything you want to add there, or is what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure, right? I think the weightedness of MQTT, because if the good thing about MQTT is it's a publish subscribe based protocol, which is very different from like a client server model that a lot of the other protocols are based, which means that you need to have direct connectivity. If I have to connect from, say, like a PLC to an application to be able to share information, you need a direct connectivity, right? And that direct connectivity means that you have to occupy that bandwidth, right? You have to deal with additional cellular costs, network latencies, and so on and so forth. With MQTT, because you have like a single source of truth, which is basically the broker at the center, that's brokering the clients that are publishing the data from, say, the OT systems, and the clients that are receiving the data from, say, the IT systems. And it doesn't have to be that way. It could be vice versa too, because it enables bidirectional communication. And the packet sizes are very, very small, if you will. So it really has exploded in terms of its ease of use, specifically for IIoT use cases. Now that juxtaposed with, say, Kafka for streaming analytics is a really powerful combination. So one of the things that we do is like, we're able to bring the data into our broker, for example, the IIoT data, and then we're able to bridge it to, say, Kafka and other database applications. So truly like an integration of OT data to IT data. So you can actually do a lot more with the data than just what we are traditionally able to do.
Okay, great. So, so Kafka, of course, would be a way to utilize time series data, right? So trend things over time and these kind of things. And that's I think it's a fantastic use case. Now, I think we hit on a key point there. So you're talking about data. We talked about an application. We talked about a system. The supply chain area is kind of the focus, but it's more general than that, even in general manufacturing, and some of the trends we're talking about in this whole panel discussion here. And we talked about data, moving data, getting data, harmonizing data, the single source of truth, Ravi, that you mentioned. Yep. MQTT is a lightweight, extensible way to do that. Bidirectional communication. It has a lot of pieces to it. Now, anytime I think about those kinds of things, and then you particularly integrate with the IT conversation, there comes a point where you go, okay, what about the security, the efficacy, the overall reliability of this type of scenario? And John, I know this is something that you work with and NCC Group works with. Can you speak to us about the idea of security and how it plays not only to the data, but maybe as the supply chain and the larger landscape of manufacturing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And it's been fascinating listening to both Matt and Ravi talk from different angles about this transformation in the supply chain space. Because when I was taking some notes and stepping back, and I'll come back to the data piece in a minute, but what I really see is, a heightened awareness by boards of supply chain issues, massive amounts of data being collected to help that digital transformation take place, and then a lot of underlying technology. And if you go out and type in on Google search supply chain market maps, you'll get a bunch of different visual infographic maps of companies that are in warehouse management systems, last mile delivery, self-driving vehicles, transportation management. The list goes on and on and on. And when you look at a lot of those, you have a lot of big companies that are known for monitoring and control software like SCADA and MES and ERP systems. And you don't think of those industrial giants as having an issue of longevity and viability of that technology, so that the manufacturers that are deploying this have to they don't really have to probably worry about somebody very big disappearing or going away. but over the past years, there's been such an influx because of COVID and all the supply chain bits that a lot of this new edge technology and IIoT technologies and industrial space stuff is increasing connectivity, intelligence, boosting productivity, all that good stuff to drive those gains, but there's a risk there. So come back to the data piece, first provenance in the data, security controls, frequent cybersecurity reviews, pen testing, things like that, traditional things like that that help prevent the manipulation or even the data being held for ransomware, if you will, in an access situation. And then your standard due diligence that you go through with vendors and third parties that can attest to the fact that there's controls. And I know before the session, we talked a little bit about SBOMs and what's happening there. And so, it's almost like the SBOMs are now becoming an attempt to capture everything that goes into a particular piece of technology or particular function inside of some part of the business, so that companies can understand where vulnerabilities are and what's the likelihood of them being able to use this technology for the time and period that they want to. So when we talk to customers, we're often getting approached from two sides, either the large manufacturers that are coming to us saying, how do we mitigate the risk of all of these intertwined technologies, or the small software developers or medium-sized software developers with new products saying, how do I put a foot forward to address these concerns that now, because of the last 3-4 years, have even been heightened even more because of company failures, bankruptcies, failures to support or maintain products. So what we see and kind of what the SBOM tries to do is we try to help companies identify where those risks are and capture all the right information, whether that's data that's sitting in the cloud, making sure that that's data is replicated somewhere to where the customer can have access to it if the data is managed in a third-party cloud or in a managed service provider. And understanding, the complexities of whether that data is single tenant and unique to the manufacturer or multi-tenant, and then looking at the technology and simply saying, okay, so how do we ensure that not only source code, but third-party build materials, tools, version control, things like that are captured to make sure that if and when something were to happen, there is an option that the manufacturer has to continue to maintain that technology internally or find somebody externally that can do that for them. So it's fascinating, hearing both Ravi and Matt talk about this, and companies like Project 44 that Matt mentioned are aggregating data, and you just wonder, there's that's the value, that's the IP of that company, is the aggregation, all of that data in a way that it can be served up, not to mention the importance of all the connectivity that somebody like Ravi's company will provide to bring all those disparate data points together. Yeah. So we're really in the business of trying to see companies come together and find solutions that can help move forward the deal and the transaction without them being worried about the sort of the negative side of failure or bankruptcy or the like.
Okay.
All right, if I can just add a quick point to what John said. Thank you, John. That was great. So connectivity is not just about like connecting one time, right? Because the data needs to be up to date, right? Especially if you're trying to create a digital twin of your factory, right? And then you're using that for your operations. the data needs to be trustworthy, right? Now, factory systems obviously keep changing a lot. There are new systems that come up, old systems go out. So the need of the hour is obviously to keep that data up to date, right? So which means that the bidirectional movement needs to be always there, and it needs to be like current and accurate. So that's another thing that is important that MQTT brokers provide to ensure that the data is up to date as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi, and John. Thank you for the overview there. And I think it's really great. And it's interesting because I've heard so often, whether we're talking about supply chain, or we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about Google or Facebook and LinkedIn and anything, it's like data is seemingly becoming this new currency, right? And the awareness of the data, the having the data, all these things are paramount to operations, and really what gives a company unique advantages, this IP that you mentioned, John, is so paramount. And Ravi, you offering the ability to connect this all together from these disparate sources and then keep it updated, right? Because a snapshot in time is exactly that. A snapshot in time is these are things that are becoming very, very important for the future. John, is there, when you're looking at data and you're looking at all this connectivity, is there particular like risk management procedures that need to be followed, and really things that need to be looked at to make sure that what you're looking at is trustworthy, and really how all that can pull together? What are your thoughts there?
Well, and I'm glad to say that the wood chipper that nobody could see has moved on. At the beginning of the session, a large wood chipper pulled up in front of my house to start chipping away at a tree. So I just wanted to make sure I was off mute before I started to talk and not have to worry about the background noise. So apologies if there was anything rolling. So really there's standard IT things that companies need to be doing around the data. Our sister division inside of NCC Group is an assurance business tied to cybersecurity, and certainly you have the standard kind of things that you're going to be doing about assessing controls, assessing where the data is coming from. Has it been tampered with? Is it accurate? Is it not accurate? Is it meeting is it fit for purpose, if you will, with inside of the business? And our expertise is more on the continuity piece, which what's fascinating in this digital transformation world that we're all living through, like you say, Ira, is the technology is there, but the technology without the data is not as useful as just the technology alone. So making sure that as you think about how do you mitigate risk in projects or tech that you deploy inside of your manufacturing floor, that you're taking consideration to the data as well, and especially if it's in the cloud, and like I said earlier, managed by a third party. Do you have access to that? Is your data commingled with somebody's data? Can you partition that data and take snapshots of it? And in some industries, like in the financial services sector, a lot of data then has attributes of sort of being technology that is will leverage worm-like technology, which is the write once, read many times, where you affix it and it can't be modified, and you're just making changes going forward. I don't think manufacturing has those kind of data attributes in the deployment, especially in the supply chain space, but just recognizing that the tech alone, without a consideration around the data and how you access that, both of those together are going to give you the view of, how do you recover if something, if some component either in services or in your platform or in your software fails on that supply chain, how do you recover from that?
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Did you have something to add there, Ravi?
Yes, I just wanted to say, yeah, John, absolutely, bang on the head. One of the things that we also see is like, in some regulated industries like pharma and chemical, they expect the data to be conforming to certain regulatory standards, right? As you're transferring the data, you need to actually either maintain it if it's already regulated, or actually conform to that regulatory standards as well, right? So it's not just about providing data for certain things, it's also providing data in a certain format that's easily, auditable and easily presentable in a compliance scenario as well.
Exactly. And pharma and financial services are two that jump out that have those requirements you mentioned, Ravi.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So on this topic as a whole, we have a few questions that have come in through chat here, and I think there's some good ones here. And one of the ones here is Matt. I think I'd like to direct this to you to start, and then we can kind of go around to see if anybody else has something to add. And this is a good point where it looks at the comment here, the question here is really about the data and the high volumes that are happening, right? So there's lots of data that's happening, and do we believe that technology is really keeping up at the same level for the amount of data that we need to really get to a process and provide a quality solution to industry? So Matt, I know from your standpoint of doing the research in supply chain and other manufacturing industries, just wanted to get your take on it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question, because yes, obviously there's much more data being generated. If you look at companies like Project 44, their business is about getting data. And when you look at the amount of data they have, it's crazy. They are growing exponentially. They have 100 times more data every year. So yes, you need to have the hardware that follows there, or at least the capacity to treat all of that data. So there's some initiatives that are being done. A lot of people upgrading their IT software, the IT equipment. A lot of people outsourcing that. The thing is that it needs to be a bigger strategy on a complete supply chain. So you have, for example, vendors like SAP, which are obviously dealing with really a strong amount of data. They are selling themselves as a neutral partner here. They are playing the constellation game. So for example, they created Catena-X, which is a group specific to the automotive industry, where they are saying, yes, so all of the supply chain stakeholders, suppliers, manufacturers, buyers, they have a lot of data. They are okay with sharing it, or maybe not. Maybe they don't trust everyone. So they would give all of that data to this Catena-X group and combine it together, where they will, so that's a strategy where they would say, okay, we give that to one specific stakeholder so that he manages everything. So that's one interesting side. On the other way, a lot of supply chain software vendors, they are moving to SaaS. They are saying, yes, you can use as much data as you want, but you need to have that on our servers and pay for that, obviously. On the other side, there's companies that think that, yeah, they don't really need to upgrade their game, and yeah, we'll see how it goes, but it's quite a complicated topic.
So Matt, maybe to expand on the question that's here, and purely out of my curiosity, is would you say a lot of the data and the management, when you're talking about that large data, is it primarily cloud-based and you're using the expandability of the cloud infrastructure to do that compute and storage, or are you seeing it on-prem, or it could be both? I'm just wondering.
Well, yes, here it's quite a sensitive topic. It really depends on the industry. There is, for example, a lot of traditional supply chain vendors that have been telling me, we are really pushing the cloud story. We're really pushing so that our new customers, they directly go on the cloud, they don't store anything on premise. But there's a lot of old, huge customers that are in industries like automotive or other industries where they're really keen on cybersecurity and they don't really want to move on that. So now we see some discrepancies in the market. For example, we have Oracle, which is also selling supply chain softwares. They used to be one of the biggest SaaS company in the world. Now they're like top 2 or 3 companies that have the most data on the cloud. In the meantime, we have some bigger companies like SAP. They are seriously struggling to move to the cloud because we have those companies that are still struggling there. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement and a big job to convince people to actually share their data together on the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Ravi, John, do you guys have anything to add to that? And it's fine. We have a couple other questions that we can get to within the time we have. If you don't, I could probably talk about that particular topic for another hour, but so I'll reserve myself.
Maybe just a quick one-liner, right? All of what Matt said is true, right? What we see is it always depends on the customer use cases. One advantage with the cloud is that you could actually have a managed service, which is much easier than managing all of it using your own IT resources on premise. So one of the reasons why customers prefer that is like, hey, it is somebody else's job to manage, say, like the broker or the solution, while I focus on my core operations, right? And then take advantage of all of the data that connects all these different systems sitting across different locations in the world in one location, so I can have a single pane of glass. So that's definitely an advantage that people are taking these days. Yeah. That's
okay.
it.
Thank you. We have another question here, and John, I think this one is this is kind of in your camp, although we could probably all comment towards it. And it's really looking, I think, at a really important topic in supply chain and also manufacturing and digital transformation. I'll summarize it here a little bit, but as we collect more data, even as Matt mentioned about on the supply chain side of things, of adding more sensors and these little devices, there's more processors, there's more devices that are ultimately in a network. What is the best architecture for these small compute devices, and how do you really maintain them and patch them and really make sure that they're okay? I see that as much as a patch management topic as well as a security topic, which kind of come hand in hand, and frankly, a management topic. Is that something you can speak to, John?
Well, briefly, I certainly am. I'm not an engineer by background. Moonlight as a chef, as I said at the beginning. So I'll leave the architecture conversation to Matt and to Ravi. But what I will tell you is that often what we see companies, large manufacturers do is when they identify the technology and the architecture that's critical on the manufacturing floor, and they understand where the points of failure are, they're regularly testing that and making sure that, much like in the SBOM idea, the concept is that if you know what is represented in the IP that you've deployed, in the technology you've deployed, and you test it on a regular basis, meaning you have somebody independently like our company going in and trying to build and replicate the software that runs those devices, then you can say, here's how I maintain and ensure that what is being delivered to me is matching what is running on the manufacturing floor. So, not just assuming that you're catching the physical embodiment of everything you need, but also testing that. But I'd be interested to see if Ravi or Matt have a different cut at that.
If I could, just real quick, if that's okay, right?
Yep.
So one of the things with this, these small compute devices, especially like, it can actually grow in large numbers real quick, right? And then you have to literally connect to all, I don't know, I wouldn't say millions, but quite a lot of devices. So you need a solution that can kind of have that ability to scale up to all of these different connections. And I think from a patching perspective, you need a decent device management solution sitting on top of it that can manage these devices reliably. So obviously, like a broker like a HiveMQ, for example, can easily scale up to millions of devices, because we started in the connected car space, where obviously you have to connect to all of these different vehicles, and that can run up to millions of vehicles on the road, if you will, that need to be connected to the server, and kind of have a device management software on top that can then manage the patching and the updating of the software and things like that.
Thank you, Ravi. Matt, was there anything you wanted to add to that at all, or is it?
Yes, I could say that it's quite a big challenge. It's quite specific to supply chain, where supply chain needs to work, right? A warehouse management system needs to work because it's quite critical to a company. And that's a huge challenge that we see for vendors, because a lot of end users don't really want to upgrade or try the new fancy technology because they're scared that it doesn't work anymore. And they have their things, their old software that are still working. And they really need to be convinced that changing technology is the right way to go.
Yeah. So just for everybody that's on the panel discussion here, listening in to us today, you know, we're nearing the end of our discussion. I do have a good question here in the chat, and I'm going to direct this one towards Ravi, but let's just ask him to keep the response quick and succinct. That way we can get to the conclusions here and get everybody out on time, because I know we have a vast array of panel discussions throughout the day and today and tomorrow. But this is a good one. So when you look at the world of protocols, I know we spoke about MQTT earlier, but there's OPC, there's OPC-UA, there's MQTT, the Kafka that was mentioned. You know, Ravi, how does one decide, you know, which one of these protocols to go towards? And, you know, in touching with that, when you look at the HiveMQ solution, because you're doing the data aggregation, you know, how does that, what is the, I guess, the from a customer's view in that platform with all these protocols, like what are some of the pluses and minuses that goes along with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, the reason why you have all of these different protocols is because different device manufacturers at some point, they wanted to kind of like standardize in their own way, right? And then very soon people realize that, oh, you know what, I think like, you know, if we want to interrupt, because that's what customers want, right? They want to use Siemens, they want to use Rockwell, they want to use all of the devices together, right? Now, obviously they don't talk to each other, and that's why OPC-UA started. But it's kind of like more of a machine to machine, right? But now with the explosion of cloud solutions and enterprise solutions, this is where I think MQTT, being that lightweight protocol, can easily get the data from, like, say, OPC-UA or other protocols, package it in a way that it can easily get the data out to the cloud. Now, obviously, there's no silver bullet, Ira. I mean, it has to be something that is based on this, like the customer scenarios and things like that. But like what is typically happening is that you have these different protocols and different solution providers that are able to aggregate the data from these different machines, if you will, say MT-Connect or Modbus and other protocols, if you will, that are machine specific, aggregate them on OPC-UA, for example, for machine-to-machine communication on premise. And then for cloud solution, it's typically like MQTT that can easily get the data to the cloud, is what we see.
Thank you. Thank you very much. John, Matt, just real quick, is anything you wanted to add there to at all as we come to a conclusion here?
Yeah,
nothing on my end. I'll let Matt speak to it.
Yeah, I could say that now it's quite an interesting time because markets are obviously highly dynamic. It could, on the other hand, be quite confusing to understand what we need to do and what vendors are doing. When you look at just technology definition, it's way too complicated to understand what a software is. So that's one thing we've been looking at IoT Analytics, trying to categorize what is a supply chain software actually, what is a supply chain hardware, what is connectivity. And yeah, now is the right time to look at market research.
Yeah, it is an interesting time. You know, I go back in the Wayback Machine of the protocol wars on the factory floor years ago, and you almost wonder a little bit, is this happening on the data space and moving things around? And everything has their purpose and its place, and there's a reason for it, as it was already mentioned. But it's somehow wading through all that to figure out what is best. And you know, again, we could probably, and I know there are other panel discussions that will cover this in more depth throughout the couple of days here. So I'm sure that'll be explored in more detail. So with that, you know, I would like to thank everybody on the panel here today. You know, I think we had a great discussion. Matt, I really appreciate your insights, your market research. I know you spent 6 months of your life here just recently digging super deep on this topic. So there's probably nobody that has as much information as you have at this moment in time on supply chain and all these connected pieces here. So I really appreciate you and IoT Analytics for everything you've been able to bring to the conversation. John, you know, your background of 35 years, your experience, and really helping us wade through the risk side of things, the security side of things, and how everything connects there, as well as contending with the wood chipper outside of your window. Truly appreciate your support, and Ravi, appreciate your insights and all things data and harmonizing it with you and the MQTT, or sorry, the HiveMQ platform there. Just really appreciate your insights and how to harmonize things and dealing with the challenges you had here with the video today. So I think we had a great discussion, and just truly appreciate everybody's time. To wrap things up, I was Ira Sharp, and I'm part of the Industry 4.0 Club, and you can find us on LinkedIn and other various places. We like to have lots of conversations like we're having here today, and really none of this would be possible without the sponsors of the IoT World events here. And those sponsors include the Hitachi Ventura, HiveMQ, Faricom, Fortinet. Sorry, my kids play way too much Fortnite, so it's Fortinet, not Fortnite. Euro.
That, but I wasn't sure if I.
Everybody will remember that name now for sure. So I apologize for mispronouncing it the first time, but everybody will remember it now. Eurotech, Oxys, Building Cyber Security, Axona, MSA, GE Digital, IFM, Intel, Litmus, and of course NCC Group. Again, really just appreciate everybody's time and attention here on this event today. And, with that, we can go ahead and bring this to a conclusion. And is there any final words from Matt, John, or Ravi that you would like to provide to the audience?
I'll just say thank you very much, Ira, for a great hosting duty today. Thank you to Lucian and his team for having us. And if anybody's interested in connecting with me on LinkedIn or answering any specific questions that you may have that didn't get answered, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to chat with anybody.
And I think that goes for everybody on the call here. I'm sure everybody would be happy to reach out, via LinkedIn, connect with them, whether it's analytics, whether it's data, whether it's security. These are the guys to talk to. And yeah, Ravi, Matt, any final words? We do have another minute or two here if you'd like.
Thank you very much for having me. Obviously, I could have talked way more about supply chains and trends. We have a report coming out very soon and a free blog also on our website. So make sure to check that out.
Yeah, what I would like to say is thank you again. My apologies for some of the technical issues that I had, due to which I couldn't turn on my video. But thank you so much, Ira, for kind of like managing this so well and bringing us together in a way. You really kind of like did what HiveMQ does, right? Which is basically bringing data from different islands together so that it all makes sense. So you're the HiveMQ for us today.
Good. Mission accomplished.
Yes.
So again, thank you all for joining us here today, and I guess go ahead and join the next panel discussion, which is going to look at not only so we talked about the trends here. Now we're going to look at the opportunities for digital transformation for manufacturing and the supply chain. And I know that you're really going to enjoy those panel discussions, and I will see you. Well, I won't see you. I will be part of those, listening in and looking forward to the rest of the day here. So thank you all very much, and you'll have a great day.